It should be. Okay. Hi. This is Steve Sabadeski, and ByteBuzz.com. And I think we have a great program. It's a Google Hangout webcast. First time that we're doing this with the Morning News Star. We have Jim Brown and Lauren Shahardy with us, and we have some incredible news that's breaking out here in Louisiana. Along with us is Greg Hilburn, who has been. Pardon? Wait. So we're on. I'm getting I need to close a couple windows I didn't realize was open. So basically, if I can have Greg, why don't you tell us what's going on, Greg, and then we're going to chime in with some questions. Tell us what's going on with the what I call the kissing Congressman McAllister drama.
So the events of the day clearly started this morning when the Republican Party chairman of Louisiana, Roger Villeray, issued a statement, which was reported at the News Star this morning first, that calling for Congressman McAllister's resignation. Later in the day, just recently, I got communication from the governor's office that the governor, too, was calling for the congressman's resignation, calling his actions an embarrassment, and that he should resign immediately. So the events obviously have been unfolding since Monday. The congressman has said that he doesn't plan to resign. I last spoke with him yesterday. We still reiterated that he didn't plan to resign. Of course, it's clear that the pressure is being put on even heavier now. So that's where we are at this point. Today, the congressman, I got a response from him by text, but he's kind of gone, he's gone dark, at least for me today. So that's where we are as of now.
So let me get this straight, Greg. We've got a very colorful group of politicians over the years who have been accused of all types of philandering, dealing with prostitutes. We've got the reputation of Edwin Edwards, all these things, and the congressman gets caught in a kiss, and all of a sudden, all of the folks that were against him when he first ran for office, the Republican Party establishment was all for his opponent, Neil Reiser, the senator up your way. In fact, Neil represents my old senatorial district up in northeast Louisiana. And we've got Bobby Jindal, whose entire campaign operation was against McAllister. Now they're just appalled by it all, and they're calling for his resignation. I don't mean to defend the congressman or condone anything he's did, but anybody who says there's not a lot of politics in play here is just not being realistic. I'm an outsider, as are the other two fellows. I'd like you to kind of comment on that because, like I say, you've got all these folks in play, and there's a lot of agendas going on that go beyond just what the congressman did or did not do. Would you agree with that?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, it's not really my place to agree or have your commentary. I can tell you what events that I see and have reported on, whether or not I think there's a conspiracy, as there are some theories out there, as there were when this race began, when Congressman Alexander resigned abruptly in August. And so I'll have to leave that up to others to speculate, but I can absolutely tell you that, as the events have unfolded, the accusations that have been made, as with the congressman's Monroe District office manager, who a minister has accused of leaking that video. So there's certainly a lot of storylines.
Would you follow up on that real quick? Then Lawrence chime on in. But in terms, who leaked it? Do you have any information? Obviously, you've been reporting on this from the get-go. Who leaked it? The minister's saying it was the office manager. Are there any facts yet to actually, any admissions, anything like that?
The office manager has not return my calls. The congressman's chief of staff, as well as the building's owner, the congressman leases office space from Bill Land, an architect, said that there were only 3 people with access to that security camera, and that was the congressman's district office manager, Leah Gordon, Bill Land, the building owner, and his employee. Although Miss Gordon has not returned my calls, Bill Land and his employee have gone on record with me as saying they would be glad if I would set up a polygraph test, that they would take that test to clear their names.
Okay, so that makes 3. Are there any other possible people out there? And also, as I appreciated, whoever was there was taking a camera and shooting the screen, the security cameras. Am I correct? Or
that's my understanding. Now, the owner of the building, Bill Land, told me that the Miss Gordon had been asking for frequent access lately to the security system is within a room, a locked room, and so she'd been asking frequently to go in. And he said that it was she had told him that they were having a problem with theft. Now, the congressman's chief of staff never mentioned to me that they were having any problem with theft, but that's what I know from the landlord.
Well, right here on the screen we have 3 attorneys, Jim Brown, Lawrence, myself. So we have a whole bunch of legal minds, and I'm bewildered. Lawrence?
Well, let me begin by saying I think Jim hit the nail right on the head. All the hue and cry about Congressman McAllister stepping down and resigning is basically coming from all the folks who didn't support him during the last election. He was not the sanctioned candidate by the Republican Party. That's not the person that they wanted. Senator Reiser was the candidate that they wanted. And now those folks are calling on the congressman to step aside. It does take away, in my opinion, some of the sincerity of the political party and other politicians trying to say they want to see him do the right thing. I found it very ironic that even among Democrats that lost out in the primary, that they were calling for him to resign also, which you would expect. I mean, after all, they lost to him in the election. Whether or not the congressman decides to resign or not will certainly ultimately be his decision, and it should be a decision that he and his family make, and he should try to see what the people of that district want. Whether or not that act was egregious enough that they want to see him step aside or not should be their decision and not a bunch of politicians' decisions.
Steve, it seems like it almost ought to be reversed. Lawrence ought to be defending some action of a Jefferson Parish politician,
such as
to the redneck Bible Belt. And I don't mean disparagingly. I'm from there, and by the way, you guys don't even know this. I ran for that 5th District congressional seat in 1978. Lost by a handful of votes to the incumbent at the time, Jerry Huckabee. I've been all over that district, and it's a conservative. Quick, just a little offshoot. The biggest issue I had during my 8 years as senator is whether down in LaSalle Parish, part of the 5th District, whether they could have a high school dance. I put it on the ballot for the parish to vote on it. By 5-1, they said no dancing up in northeast Louisiana. So it shows you how conservative area is up that way. So it's kind of ironic that Alexander, the former congressman, resigned and then took a job in Baton Rouge, a real quick election. All the wheeling and dealing going on in the 5th District. I'd pick any district in the state but the 5th District. Boy, it's sure the focus of not only the state of Louisiana, but the entire nation. NBC, CBS, Morning Joe this morning. So it's got a lot of attention.
Well, from no dancing to plenty of kissing. I'm just wondering.
Skip the stuff in between.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you this, Lawrence. Because Jim brought it up, and let's put some names together. Talking about Jefferson Parish, where you are, where I am, and one of the people who's a player here, of course, is Roger Villery, chairperson of the Louisiana State Republican Party. A good friend of mine, a good friend of yours, somebody I really respect a lot. And obviously he's feeling a lot of pressure. then another person from Jefferson Parish, somebody who I don't agree with that much, is David Vitter. Now, I got to tell you that I know that there are a lot of people are wondering why in the world are they blasting this guy for kissing when David Vitter had admitted a horrible sin, a terrible sin, and the allegation, of course, was prostitution. And the Democrats have come out with an email saying, "Hey, Republicans, we're really happy that you've gone ahead and that you've requested David Vitter to resign." But of course, they were kidding. I'm just wondering. I mean, isn't this the ultimate in hypocrisy?
Well, it's also the ultimate in politics, and that's what you see. It's all politics. Usually, though, what you see is when a member of the opposite party does something that's perceived to be egregious, that the opposing party will call for their resignation or a big investigation or what have you. You're correct, Steve. I mean, what Senator Vitter confessed to was certainly more egregious than what Congressman McAllister is seen on tape doing. So there is it's a double standard to a certain extent, and how you answer that probably is best addressed to those folks who maybe were silent in the past but are very vocal today.
On the other hand, Steve, I can say this: there is a little difference. First of all, Vitter's admittance was for something that happened 4 or 5 years earlier when it all came out. There was a pretty good time span in there. Now, it still was a huge problem for him that got huge play, but he very astutely ran against strictly Barack Obama in his reelection. Congressman McAllister, the Democratic candidate, tried to make some hay out of it, and it just didn't go anywhere. So the time frame plays in favor of Vitter, number one. The second thing is, when you're caught on video like that, people might understand, well, it was just a peck on the cheek or maybe a little kiss on the lips. But if you look at the video that Greg's been playing up that way, and it just goes on and on and on and on, the video is so overwhelming that I think the emotions play up a lot more, and that maybe is the difference between the Vitter situation and what's happening with McAllister.
Well, yeah, but the issue is morality. I mean, that's my understanding in terms of the way that Roger Villere has couched his letter requesting, urging resignation. The outrage of the act. I mean, you cannot, in my view at least, you cannot be so outraged about somebody's act and whether it happened 4 years ago or 2 years ago, 10 years ago. I mean, it surfaced. And when it surfaced, that's when it becomes an issue. Now, of course, the voters decide, and that's what you're talking about. Greg, I'm just wondering, what are you hearing up there in North Louisiana? I mean, or Central Louisiana? I mean, are you hearing outrage from others so far? Outrage? Yeah.
Well, there is quite a bit of outrage, but there are also defenders of the congressman who says it's it's his personal business. It won't affect the way he governs. Clearly, it will have some impact on his effectiveness, at least for now. But I would say it's tilting against him right now in these early stages. That's just just chatter, but that's my take on it.
Now, when it happened to David Vitter, it was tilting against him too, and he went undercover for roughly 7 days, I believe. There were some reports on TV, at least, that there may be a suicide. We were just really concerned, wondering what was going on. Obviously, we have a situation that's different, but the Republican Party here is saying, hey, you need to surface, you need to talk to us. That's not exactly as I appreciate it. That's not what happened, way back then. Yet the standards are different. Are you hearing anything about that? You know, having to kiss the ring of the leaders of the Republican Party?
Well, clearly the congressman has been somewhat of a rebel and hadn't toed the party line, most notably with his criticism of Governor Jindal, generally considered the head of the state party, the governor, if he's a Republican or she, on his refusal to expand Medicaid. He's stuck by that throughout the campaign and throughout his candidacy. And there have been others. He's taken little jabs at Jindal. So he's clearly not towing the party line as do some others. So it's certainly, I think that.
Looks like we lost him for a second. We'll stay on.
Steve, let me just say this though, that you know, one of the big differences is that in this particular case, it's one thing to read about something like this in the newspaper. It's one thing to read a newspaper story that somebody did something that other people disagree with or are offended by or what have you. It's a whole different ball game when you have a video of it.
Oh,
and
sure,
I think that's probably the biggest problem that the congressman has right now is the fact that there's a video of what actually happened. It's not open to speculation. You got the video, you see it, he's admitted it. I believe the lady has admitted that that was her in the video as well. So I think that's the biggest problem. I think the second problem for him is the fact that he's gone into hiding. If you want to try to outlive this, as Senator Vitter did so very well.
But he also went into hiding.
Issues. Well, he did, but ultimately he came out to the public and he stood up and he took his medicine in public. His wife stood next to him, and they were together on that stage, expressing remorse. He did, and then asking for time with his family. The congressman, as far as I know, has not in fact done that. He has not come out. He has not said anything to the public, and I believe that's hurting him as well. If, in fact, he wants to remain in Congress and have a chance at re-election, my opinion is that what he needs to do is to step up in front of the television cameras, hopefully with his wife's forgiveness and his family's forgiveness, and express his apologies, express his remorse, and try to move on from there. But if he remains in hiding, the pressure on him to resign, whether it's, no matter who it's coming from, the pressure is going to continue to beat him down. And if he doesn't say anything in public, could end up being the death knell, so to speak, of his public career.
Okay. Yeah, go on, Jim.
If I can, Steve. I think that Lawrence is right on the money. Vitter made his mea culpa, and then he kind of disappeared from the scene, never talked about it again. And he had several years before he had to face the voters again. So he could lay low for a while, then really get into the work and kind of rebuild a relationship. The difference here is that we got an election coming up in, 6 months where McAllister has to run for re-election. It's a very short time frame. I guess if he called me and said, look, forget the right and the wrong, what's the best way to deal with this thing? I'd do exactly what Lawrence says. I'd have a full-blown press conference out there and making the case for the whole flow about his defense and asking forgiveness. But I'd pull a Bill Clinton. I was up in Pentecostal country in Alexandria, Louisiana, at the First United Pentecostal Church about 2 weeks after Bill Clinton was caught with Monica Lewinsky when that all blew up. Clinton came in, talked to that church for about an hour, begged for forgiveness, had Reverend Mangum up there, bless him and pray for him. I'll tell you, there wasn't a dry eye in the place. 95% of the people were crying. They forgave him, and Clinton took it right out and was very, very public. So with 5-6 months to go, I think it's pretty imperative that McAllister is going to have to do something like that if he has any chance whatsoever in terms of wanting to run again for re-election.
We all agree with that. I think he needs to be public, and but let me just throw some out to you. And I wrote about this yesterday. I wrote about this yesterday, and that is that there was a column in the website Red State, a gentleman by the name of Horowitz, And basically what he said was that, how immoral and I'm just summarizing, how immoral what this guy did, meaning McAllister did, okay, and that, we shouldn't allow this in the party. But then he goes a little bit further, and he says, and this guy is a rhino, and we need to get rid of him. To me, looking at this as disinterested as possible, to me, it tells me that politics is more important, the way somebody votes is more important to some people than their values and morality. And that is sickening to me, whether it's Republican or Democrat. When Clinton had problems, I was all for his resigning. When any Democrat has a problem like this, they ought to resign. This guy ought to resign. But if you're going to urge somebody to resign, I think you ought to go all the way if you're dealing with if you want your party to stand for something.
Well, from a practical point of view, I hear you say, but I think Lauren started this conversation by saying that, there's all kinds of political give and take in the water in something like this. So he says he's not going to resign. I guess he could resign, go off into the sunset, but he's looking at Bill Clinton. He's looking at David Vitter. He's got some advisors by saying, hang in there, and this all may work out for you. It's my opinion, based on having run for that office in the 5th District, being from up that way, having been senator up there, that if he does hang in, he cannot get reelected, particularly in that district. I don't think he can get reelected. Having said that, maybe he's thinking that win or lose, whether he wins or loses, at least maybe the campaign will give him a chance to get around and do a mea culpa and in some way revise his reputation to some degree. But I think the guy, knowing the 5th District like I do, and I'd like to hear what Greg says. Greg may not want to comment since he's more an online reporter, but sure. I think the guy's toast, quite frankly.
Well,
yeah, go on, Greg.
Well, the congressman has told me through yesterday that he didn't intend to resign. Now, he said unless there's an outcry, a public outcry from his constituents. He didn't say from the governor or from the party chairman or from the Washington, his colleagues in Washington. He has not been out He has not been out yet to see if there is that outcry. He has been here. He's in the district. In fact, he won't be back in Washington. I don't expect him to be back until week after next, because next week is the Easter recess. So I don't think he's been out yet to test the waters among, at a festival or something to see what those voters say. I know he is. I'm certain he's hearing from his donors, which is just as important. So I think he's weighing his options. He may finish this term and then decide, I can't win, I'm not going to run for re-election. He still may resign. Who knows? As of yesterday, late yesterday, but that was before kind of the piling on began, he intended to at least finish out his term.
And I'll bet he doesn't. I doubt he even knows. I think he's going to see how the next few weeks develop, and that's probably the advice he's getting. And so, again, I think if he's got any shot of even thinking about re-election, I think you may be seeing him doing that mea culpa tour, going parish to parish, church to church, asking for forgiveness, telling what a horrible sin he's committed. But, people are forgiving. As I say, that's just something that time is going to take to wash out to see how responsive and effective.
Jim,
Greg, let me ask you a question, Greg, and that is, if I might, and that is the husband of the Mr. Peacock. Anything going on with that? Has he filed a lawsuit? Has anybody talked to him in more detail? Do you know?
He has not filed a lawsuit that I'm aware of. He is, other than for divorce, maybe, but he has said that the congressman has wrecked his life. He loved his wife. He's heartbroken. He can't believe it. He's in 2 different interviews. Now he's now saying he's not going to give any more interviews, but that's not. we have seen politicians survive and thrive. I mean, Senator Vitter right now, at least, is the front runner for the next gubernatorial election. But those that survive, I think you generally find this one thing that's different is that those people from Bill Clinton to Senator Vitter had their party rally behind them rather than abandon them, or at least show some signs of support. In this case, he doesn't have the infrastructure behind him to gird his his seat. So I don't know.
Go on, Lawrence. I think you have.
Yeah, let me just say this: that from a political standpoint, what I said earlier, I think, is critical for this guy to do, and that is to get out in front of the public, in front of the press, and express his remorse and try to begin to make amends in that way. Now, what we don't know is what's going on back home, and I don't mean back home in the district. I mean back home in the family home. I mean, we don't know what's going on inside of there. What's his wife's attitude? What's his kid's attitude? What is that all about? But what he has to do, if he wants to have a chance to survive politically, he's going to have to get in front of the press and take that beating. He's going to have to do it.
But
and then what he's got to do is do what I think what Jim was saying is start the apology tour. Start going around the district. Start going to the churches. Start meeting with people, and do the apology tour. If he doesn't do any of that, and I'm in agreement with Jim, and I don't know that district the way Jim does, but certainly if he doesn't at least do that, he's got absolutely no chance of getting reelected, in my opinion. As far as the politicians are concerned, I'm sure he is discounting whatever they say. They didn't support him when he ran. He got elected despite them. So their input, I'm sure, is not critical to him. But what the public thinks is critical, and that's why he needs to get out there and start that apology or mea culpa tour, because that's the only shot he's got, in my opinion.
Greg, you were going to comment, please?
Well, I was just going to point out that although Senator Vitter did apologize, after that he shut down. He wouldn't speak to media. He said, "I will not speak of it again." He went on no tour. That was it. And in fact, he only for years and still to some extent does not go to editorial boards, to gatherings where there might be someone ask him that about it. So he did apologize, but then he said, "I won't speak of it again."
And worse, if I can follow up on that, is that he then says that he has talked about it. The only thing he said is that I've sinned, but he hasn't even told us what the sin's about. But let me ask you, what about Mr. Robertson? Now, has he from Duck Dynasty? Obviously, he was up in Congress, and his wife were up in Congress during the swearing in. Has he made any statement? Is he going to go on tour with with the congressman?
I don't think he's going to go on tour. I have talked to Willie Robertson and the oldest brother, Al Robertson. Both would only say they have no comment at this time. I asked Congressman McAllister if he had talked to him. He said he had talked to Willie, and that Willie had told him that he needed to settle his private life privately. So that's it. I have talked to the Duck Dynasty folks, but they're not interested in expanding on their thoughts.
Another question I have is that I read, I think it was a tweet, and basically what it said was that somebody reported that Mr. Peacock had been close friends, a contributor to the congressman, and had made a statement that the congressman was the least religious person that he knew. Is that something that you reported? Have you read that? Can you provide some information about that for us?
We did report it. I didn't write that particular story. That was a CNN story, but we did run that story with the quotes, and he did say that when he asked during the campaign, when he asked then Vance McAllister, "What is this about you and these commercials with you in church?" He said, when did you become religious? And Mr. Peacock said McAllister's response was, "Well, when I needed the votes." Now, of course, that's Mr. Peacock's story. They were. I do know that the two families were close friends, often did things together, including their children. So it's a really terribly sad situation.
Lawrence, Jim, do you have any questions about some of the facts that everybody's interested in?
Well, it's not a simple story. It's somewhat complicated. Our friend Butch Aswell, who's from Ruston initially, a political columnist from here in the Baton Rouge area, kind of tried to sum it up in a column today. He brought up the Peacock relationship with McAllister, and this is who actually did the video, somebody inside. Why would they do it if they're on the payroll? This is a little more complicated than, say, the Bitter situation. So the story has legs. I'm looking at Politico.com, the Insider Washington publication. The lead story right now is how to survive a scandal. They're doing up there in Washington exactly what we're doing right here with some of their reporters sitting around a table saying how it will affect his standing in the House and what he can do to survive. So it's a complicated story that's got legs. Unfortunately, for McAllister, it's not going away. This story's got a lot of legs and it's got a long, long way to go. So I'm sure we'll be talking about this in other Google Hangouts here for some time to come.
Lawrence, do you have any questions? I have a few other questions I wanted to ask Greg about. Do you have any
my comment at this point would simply be that everything that could be bad about this story for the congressman is in fact bad. As I said earlier, this wasn't something that was in print. You've got the video, and that's the worst of all. I mean, there's nothing left to the imagination when you see that video. And I think that's probably what his biggest problem is, and that may be what's causing such a great a great cry for him to step down. And I'm sure a lot of people in the district extremely disappointed, because it's not just that he kissed someone. It's not that he may have kissed them in a passionate way. You get to watch it. You get to be a voyeur through the whole thing. And a picture is worth 1,000 words. There's nobody, I don't care how good of a writer you are, there's absolutely no way that the written word can outdo watching the video. And that's his big problem. And that's why, to survive politically, he's got to address it some kind of way at some point if he wants to try and survive this politically.
Greg, I fully understand, and I think we all agree with you there. But, Greg, let me ask you this. Any facts in terms of how this story actually came about? I mean, we're not sure who actually took the video, but, that was, what, few months ago. And this video has been around. The video, as I understand, showed up at a newspaper in Wachita. Am I correct?
Washita.
Washita.
Hey, Greg,
Okay.
Greg, you can sure tell that he ain't no redneck, can't you? So
That's right.
one of those New Orleans guys. They don't know how we deal up this way.
He hadn't been to the Hall of Fame Music and Faraday.
Yeah, I'm having problems with Jefferson down here, but saying that. I mean, nevertheless, I mean, the film showed up in a newspaper, small newspaper, and then an hour later, as I understand it, and this is what was reported by one of the bloggers, an hour later, Politico had it. I think y'all got it also within that time frame. So, I mean, any information about that? I mean, I know there are sources that you can't reveal and all, but it sounds to me like this thing was planned. Part of it was planned. The release of it was planned.
Well, the story that accompanied the video was very detailed, very well done. So that it was clear that the reporter who did that had been working on it for quite a while, days probably. Now, as far as the timing of the release, or I did read somewhere where they said, now how could someone at a small weekly newspaper and it catch on so quick? Well, as soon as these days, it doesn't matter whether you're a small weekly newspaper or just some individual. If you have something that powerful, it picks up so fast on the internet. So I'm not surprised that it lit fire that fast across the country.
What about the fact that it was subdued for delayed and maybe kept underground for 3 or 4 months?
Well, the minister who accuses the staff member of leaking the video said that she had had taken it to, was in a quandary of what to do about it. Now, of course, we've run that story. I don't know that firsthand, so I don't know what if it was Miss Gordon. I don't know what her motive was or what she was thinking, and if it wasn't, who knows? But the minister says that he'll go to court if he has to. He doesn't want to, but he'll go to court if he has to and produce witnesses. And of course, we see now that the congressman has decided he doesn't want anybody in court because he backed off the FBI investigation on Wednesday that he told me on Monday night and Tuesday, and his chief of staff told me that they thought was important because it was what they called a grave breach of a security in a federal office.
I've heard that before down here in New Orleans with the Mary Landrieu situation and the telephones. But anybody have any questions? Any other questions? Yeah.
As I'm sitting here listening to you guys and talking about a very fascinating conversation, I'm going down some of the national news feed. This is just in the last hour, and I just give you some of the headlines down the line. Just Duck Dynasty star counsels kissing congressman, ABC News. Republicans kiss votes from women goodbye. That's a national news feed on a national publication. Here's one from the Washington Post. It's today's Washington Post. Politicians don't cheat more than regular people. They just get caught more. So it reiterates, this is perverse, and you guys might agree with this, but we've heard about all these reform governors all this year and all these powerful congressmen up there in Washington. And I did a story that's on BayouBuzz.com today about how Louisiana has the worst drivers in America and the highest insurance rates in America. You go right down the national list, and we still are anywhere from dead last to second or third from last in virtually every index going on. Someone told me today, says, you know what, Jim? Maybe there's nothing wrong with this. Mississippi has the same levels we do, but we're so much more fun and interesting here. We've got all these crazy folks, the crazy politicians. I saw, Greg, a great cartoon that came over to me here. It said, well, McAllister's put the fun back in fun row. So we always joke about Monroe being fun row because it's not known as being quite as lively. Well, McAllister's put the fun back in fun row. Just maybe all of these crazy things. Edwin Edwards running for Congress, you put them all together, and people around the country saying, look, that is a weird place. I want to go down there and see what life is like down in Louisiana. Who knows? Maybe it all has a backwards positive in some out-of-the-way way.
Well, it's a great way for economic development, to promote economic development for sure, right? I mean, but Lawrence, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I just, look, it's certainly a much better story when it's a high-placed elected official getting caught in a situation like this. Are politicians more prone to these kinds of lapses? I don't know if they are or aren't, but certainly it makes for a better story than the guy who owns the corner hardware store. So that's why you see all this excitement and publicity. And look, no disrespect to anybody in the news media, but the media loves it. The media loves it, and with all the bickering going on in Washington today, every time a Democrat stumbles, the Republicans are ready to jump on top of it and make a big story out of it. And the same is true when the shoe's on the other foot. So I think it's just we're going to have to get used to this if we're not already there, that this is what the state of government and politics is today of these kinds of stories.
Speaking of it, Greg, I mean, are you hearing any kind of consolidations? Anybody, I guess, supporting the congressperson at this point, or any local people really coming out, being outraged? Anything going on in that regard?
The biggest person of note that has come out in support of the congressman is Congressman Richmond, his Democratic colleague from Louisiana, who came out today and said that it was his personal matter. I'm paraphrasing, but that it's none of our business, basically. And so that's the most prominent name to come out for him. The only newsmaker who has come out for him. There are individuals, who sign on to our website and Facebook, but the only newsmaker to come out for him so far is Congressman Richmond.
I hear that John Bonner actually got involved, basically saying, well, it's that the congressman's going to have to make a decision. I'm wondering, have you heard anything whether or not this has gotten up that high, whether or not the speaker or others in Washington are trying to put some weight on this issue that kind of forced this, the matriculated down to Baton Rouge and Jefferson Parish?
Well, so far, and it's on my story that's online now. I've got reaction from Speaker Boehner and others in Washington, other colleagues, and none of them have called for his resignation. They're disappointed. They say he's got to make some kind of decision soon. But I think they are satisfied with the people back home doing that dirty work, not dirty work, but putting that kind of pressure. So far, anyway, until it impacts them.
Right. Are there any other things that you've written about that we haven't talked about yet that maybe our audience would like to know more about?
Well, it's just a fascinating. It's really all started when the former dean of the delegation, Representative Rodney Alexander, who was what they call a cardinal in Washington. He had ascended to a chairmanship of a subcommittee on appropriations when he abruptly resigned without finishing his term last August. And since then, it has been quite the story to play out. First with him, and now into this. So the constituents of the 5th District have had a tumultuous 8 to 9 months. I can assure you of that.
Absolutely, and we'll have to do a whole lot more webcasts. I'm sure that it'll be a lot of fun, a lot more excitement. Talking about fun and excitement, I heard that there may be other women. Have you heard anything about that? I mean, I haven't. Somebody just said they may know some information about that. I'm not saying there are.
Well,
are there any stories to that effect?
Naturally, there are certainly rumors to that effect, but I have no confirmation of other women.
Well, we're going to close this out real soon. Let's just do one thing, if you don't mind. Let's go into the prediction game. What do you think? What do you think is the really big issue here? The real big issue, say locally. This is playing out. And I know that it's difficult, for a reporter to, but still, do you have a sense in terms of where you think this story is going to go? That's going to really resonate, not just in Louisiana, but even more so nationwide.
Well, I think his mood when I talked to him, he seemed steadfast in that he wasn't going to resign unless he had some kind of hue and outcry. He did not say definitively that he would run again. So this. I guess he could. I don't know that he's going to do this, but he could announce that he's not going to run it again, but finish the term, and then then the story kind of goes away because he's not. He's done. You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
Until he resigns or says that he won't. That he'll finish his term but won't run again. Then the story just keeps building, I think.
Yeah, and that could be a really good compromise, it would seem to me, for everybody involved. Jim, what's the big story here that has legs? I mean, what is this going a one-day event, or where is this going?
Well, I think the big story from the overall observers is that here we sit in a state that, as I said, is 50th when it comes to the terrible drivers in the country, bottoms of list after list, a legislature that will not focus on anything substantive in terms of the quality of life of the people we represent in Northeast Louisiana as well as the rest of the state. And so we've got all these massive problems, and what do we focus on? The peccadillos of a congressman that's going on now for, what, a week, and will continue to go on and on and on. I think I've gotten a fair amount of disgust. It's fascinating initially, but folks saying, my gosh, is this all we got to talk about? Are we so obsessed about, are our lives so dull, and do we have so little hope about the future living in Louisiana that this is the biggest focus we have? So sure, it's serious. The guy was apparently unfaithful to his wife, probably ought to step down, but should this be this ongoing national story that leads every news source in America over what's happening in little old Monroe, Louisiana? To me, that's the story.
Interesting. Lawrence?
Well, I'd like to pick up where Jim left off and just say that, we do have a lot of problems. And in today's world here in this country, we have two political parties that just can't seem to sit down together and work through issues and work through problems and pass legislation that is beneficial to this country. We are at polar opposites when it comes to Democrats and Republicans. Democrats are way to the left, Republicans are way to the right, and the people of this country and the people of this state are the losers in that, because nothing good is being done. With regard to this scandal and what's going on, yeah, it's a news story. Should we focus on it for the next 9 months? I don't think so. Is it an issue in that congressional district? Certainly is. If the congressman decides to run for re-election, it would be. Is it really critical that the people in Montana know every single day about what's going on? I don't think so. We do have our priorities somewhat screwed up and messed up, and this could end up being another example of our messed up priorities, that we're more interested in people's sideline activities, so to speak, rather than focusing on what are you doing to benefit the people of your district. I don't think it's something that Washington is going to lose a lot of sleep over. This is not like a congressman that took a bribe, for example. That would be something that Washington ought to be concerned about. But this is not that. Let's hope that this plays out rather quickly, and that we can maybe try to focus on what's truly important and not what's more entertaining.
My 2 cents are go ahead, Jim.
I'm going to tell Greg, I think you ought to sit down at the Chamber of Commerce, tell them about this conversation, say, look, not a lot's happening up here except this. Let's make an issue of, run these big advertisements. Come to Funrow. Come on up here. Boy, we really live a wild life up this way. You got to come up and see us and spend some time and spend your money. So maybe you guys can make some money up there on it. After all, get something beneficial out of it.
Yeah, we got to do something about economic development in the state, and this is a good way of doing it. I think that, and if you don't mind, let me just close it with this, and that is that, to me, I think it's not a big story like you're saying, although we're making it a big story, but I think it's a big issue. And I think the big issue politically is that it's going to have an impact on the governor's race. And I think, and why? Because I think that there are a lot of people in the both the Republican Party and Democratic Party who are going to seize on this and are going to start taking sides. And the person in the middle, quite frankly, is Senator Vitter. And so I think that that is where this is going to play out. But let me just mention one other thing, and that is that, in my view at least, I think it's time for us to stop, to put an end, to to these kind of scandals. I really respect the fact that the Republican Party has come out and said, look, you ought to resign. Look at what you've done. And I just think it needs to be consistent. And I think the Democratic Party ought to be doing that too. When there's, say, Congressman Wiener situation or any of those other situations that have occurred, I just think we need to put an end to this. We have to set examples for our kids, and when we have these kind of things, it becomes really important to how we are viewed by our kids and the rest of society. And so I applaud the Republican Party. I just think they need to be a whole lot more consistent.
Well, I'm not disagree with you per se, because I agree it's a terrible thing. But on the other hand, we've got a system in this country, and I don't like the fact that part of this, what I thought was a system, has been ripped away from us. We got the big money interests that run this country and that buy these politicians. We've got millions and millions going to be spent in this U.S. Senate race. We've lost control of our issues. And if I was still living in the 5th District, where I lived for years, where I represented, if I were still voting up there, I'd say, okay, we got some problems, but let me tell you the rest of the state and the rest of the country. Let us decide. State Republican Party, you guys down in New Orleans, don't tell us what to do or what not to do. Leave us alone. We'll make a decision about this guy. In the 6th District, leave us alone. We'll pass judgment on Edwin Edwards, but quit telling us how to run our business. Quit telling us what to do. The federal government and the state government is running our lives now.
We don't do that.
Get out of our business, leave us alone, and let us make our decision as to whether or not to keep this guy.
Greg, listen, any last words, Greg?
No, just more to come, I'm sure.
Absolutely, and we'll be here, and we certainly appreciate your taking your time, and the Monroe News Star allowing you to participate with us in trying to bridge this news information using this type of technology statewide. So listen, thank you all. I really appreciate everybody taking the time. And again, this is BayouBuzz.com, Steve Sabatowski, publisher, and see you all really soon. Thank you all so very much. And
thank you.